G'day, ZiggyD here, and welcome to my first impressions and skill gem analysis for the new skill added in Path of Exile's patch 1.1.4, Flame Surge. Now, I got to play around with Flame Surge a little bit in the alpha, and I had some thoughts on it back then, but I've had a bit more of a chance to think about it now and chat to more people about it, and it's a pretty interesting spell. It's not one that I think will become like a flavor of the month spell. I don't think it's going to become like a Flame Blast or anything that everyone uses. However, I do think it actually has the power to be, the potential to be very powerful, but in more niche roles. So I think it's a pretty nice addition to the game in general. Now, something I didn't sort of mention when I was showing it off in the alpha is that I was playing that on a character that was using increased AoE, because this is an AoE skill, not a projectile skill, and I also had all of the AoE modifiers on the passive tree. Now this character here has the AoE modifiers on the passive tree as well, all of them, so the base cast of Flame Surge is actually much smaller than what you're seeing right here. So, as you can see, it's a slight sort of cone. It's very similar to Glacial Cascade in that it goes out in sort of a bar shape away from your character. I can't quite tell whether it's an actual cone. It certainly looks like a bit of a cone. I suspect it's more of like a long rectangle out from your character. But it's basically just a one-hit, pretty simple AoE in a very small area. So, pretty small area. Even using increased AoE, still pretty small. Like, it's not like you can off-screen with this. With Carcass Jack, and I'm also using Divinarius, which gives another 10% radius skills. So the only thing I'm missing is Carcass Jack here. With Carcass Jack, you could maybe get close to reaching the end of the screen, which is, you know, pretty viable for pack clearing, but even then it's still a pretty narrow field. So, what I actually think this skill is probably going to be best used for is kind of like melee DPS for spells. This sort of thing just doesn't exist at the moment. There's maybe you could call something like Incinerate a melee spell, but there's just not many melee spells at the moment. You know, actual melee characters have things like they can use a lot of different ranged skills like Lightning Strike and Spectral Throw, and then they can go up and close into melee for a very high DPS thing like Double Strike or Dual Strike. Whereas spells don't really have that many really powerful melee things. They're all AoE or they're all very ranged. So the addition of something that kind of can function as a melee spell I think is actually pretty interesting. Now this is only a level 2 gem that I'm using here, but we now have the numbers on this thing all the way up to like level 28. And they're actually very, very high. I'm currently in Merciless, Twilight Strand Merciless, and I did test this in Docks earlier, and I can actually deal pretty nice damage against the guys here. With a level 2 gem, this is a level requirement of 23 in a level 52 zone, and it actually deals pretty nice damage. Now at level 17, it deals more damage than a level 20 Fireball. This thing actually does absurd damage, and that's without the modifier, because this gem has a unique thing just here. 50% more damage against burning enemies. Now, the skill itself cannot ignite itself. It's a very interesting spell all over, because although it cannot ignite itself, I'm on a crit build, so I crit a lot of the time. You'll see these crits happen. You can hear the crits happening there. I can't ignite myself, but if you have ignited targets with something else, let's say Searing Bond, you'll deal 50% more damage against those targets. So I can use Searing Bond to ignite this guy and then deal 50% more damage. Now this is a natural choice for anyone using, so this counts as burning and ignites, so things like Fire Trap, things like Searing Bond, things like Righteous Fire, and ignites from things like Fireball or Flame Blast or the initial explosion of Fire Trap, or even using something like Cold Snap with the 3 Dragons unique that converts ice damage your cold damage can ignite but not freeze or chill. Cutting forwards a little bit here. There we go, there's the ignite. So we can use something like Ignite Prolif there with any other spell that can ignite and get the bonus damage from Flame Surge to increase its damage. So I think this will be a natural choice for a lot of different fire builds as an extra supplementary DPS skill. Things like killing bosses or killing rare mobs with high health, killing map bosses, or even boss farming, like so let's say on Magic Find builds. Let's say you have like a Righteous Fire Magic Find build. This might be the highest single target DPS skill that you can possibly add into a Righteous Fire build. So I think it has very cool and very exciting potential in there. So let's talk about some of the other facts of the skill. Quality improves the cast speed, and I think cast speed is a pretty natural choice for something you want to get absurd DPS on. We've seen, obviously, with skills like Dual Strike or Double Strike, getting high attack speed is a good way to boost their damage. Getting high cast speed on Flame Surge is also very good. Now, it also has a pretty high base crit chance of 6%, So increasing your crit and crit scaling is a very good way to increase its actual DPS, even though it can't ignite. The fact that you're also doing 50% more damage on top of that if you have the mobs ignited or burning with another skill means that you can potentially obtain very, very high damage with this skill. Now the skill is tagged as fire, so that means you can scale it with anything like fire damage stuff. Now if you're playing like a Righteous Fire or a Flame Trapper or some sort of fire build, it's natural that you'll be picking up things like Immolation, Firewalker, and any other fire damage boosts. This also includes any elemental damage boosts will boost it as well. However, obviously going things like burning damage aren't going to directly benefit the skill itself since it can't ignite. However, there is something interesting you can do with this skill, and you may have gotten a hint here with the 3 Dragons Unique. I'm currently using the 3 Dragons Unique. Now, although Flame Surge has very high crit chance but can't ignite, it seems kind of like that crit chance is only useful for DPS, but you can actually use that to make Flame Surge shock. And shocking targets, you know, as you guys probably know, increases the DPS even further. So let's say you're standing in melee with a boss with Righteous Fire, burning them. You are getting the 50% more damage. You are a crit scaling build, so you're critting them and dealing a lot of damage anyway. But then you use the 3 Dragons Unique just here, which you say your fire damage can shock but not ignite. Now Flame Surge already can't ignite, but it can shock. And I'll show you guys if I go crit some mobs just up here, that I can in fact shock stack with it, and you will see these mobs get shock stacked. You can see the shock stack effect on these mobs just there, and it's actually a very potent way of shock stacking this mob like that. And if you are stacking cast speed as well, like the quality suggests from the skill, then you're probably going to be able to build up 3 shock stacks on a boss very quickly, especially because it's such a high damage shock stack as well. Very potent shocks. And even only at level 2 on this gem at the moment here in a level 52 zone, I'm able to get very potent shock stacks on these mobs just here. You can see how long that's lasting there. That's pretty much not going away at all. That's 1 shock stack sticking around for a very long time there. So then if you build up the higher damage second and third shock stacks, it's going to get even better there. So on top of that, the skill is tagged as spell, so any spell modifiers work, anything that increases spell damage and stuff like that, so you can use Iron Will and things like that with it if you want to. The AoE tag means that, although it is possible, as I said, to increase the AoE through things like Divinarius, the AoE modifiers, and Carcass Jack, you can also use Conk Effect to increase its damage by a lot, and if you are using this for what I think its intended purpose is, as a high damage melee spell, then Conk Effect is a natural choice. You can see with my AoE increases there, it's still got enough to sort of allow you to sort of move around a boss a little bit, reposition a bit, while still maintaining pretty good damage on a boss in sort of melee range. Just here, you're easily going to be able to hit any sort of boss. And even if you remove all of the AoE scaling that I have, you will be able to stand melee. It'll probably go to about here with Conk Effect, and you should be able to steal melee a boss down very easily with it. Like, it's always going to be effective in melee with Conk Effect, but you get 51% more area damage here at level 2, and that scales up as well. Now, if you want to add a little bit of utility onto the gem, I think something like Added Lightning might be a good option. If you're already using the 3 dragons to make Flame Surge shock targets, then adding Lightning actually causes it to freeze, so you can see your lightning damage can freeze but not shock. And I think there's definitely some interesting builds that can come out of this. So, for example, let's say we want to keep that boss a little bit frozen, a little bit still. You can see that I'll actually freeze and shatter mobs here as well, so that adds a nice little bit of extra utility to the skill. I'm thinking if we're going along with this line of theory crafting, however, that an optimal set of supports are probably something like faster casting, Conk Effect, something like crit chance, increased critical strike chance, increased critical strike multiplier, and potentially something like Added Lightning or Power Charge on crit to help you sustain and generate power charges with the actual skill itself. So I do think Flame Surge has a lot of potential. I can already see how high the DPS is going to get as you level up the skill, and from seeing the numbers on like level 17 and then the exceeding level 20, so using Empower and things like that, and using like +1 gems and stuff, the damage you can get with this skill is absolutely insane. So I do think it has some potential. It is a niche skill, so I wouldn't try and make a Flame Surge build that uses it to clear packs, but if you come up with some other good AoE option, let's say using your burning damage from Fire Traps or Righteous Fire, or maybe just using Flame Blast, then having this as a secondary skill in a 4-link or something to use a single target DPS, that's a good option. Or if you want to make like a Magic Find boss farming build, then this might be a very good option. You can simply switch it out with Flame Blast while you're running to the boss, and then kill the boss with Flame Surge very, very quickly. So very interested to see the cool builds that people come up with this skill. I think it has a lot of potential, and I'm very happy to see it added to the game, because it does, as I said, feel a bit of a niche of spells that don't really exist at the moment, the whole idea of a melee spell. So very cool to see it. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. That's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.